The media is the message and the messenger, and increasingly a powerful one.
In a world of 1 million channels, people try to do more shocking things to break through the clutter. They resort to violent images, or sexually offensive images, or demeaning images.
When is it gonna be enough?
There is no appreciation for women intellectuals. It's all about the body, not about the brain.
You all saw the photo from the weekend of Hillary looking so haggard and looking like 92 years old.
Breast implants, did you have them or not?
If you waterboarded Nancy Pelosi, she wouldn't admit to plastic surgery.
The fact that media are so derogatory to the most powerful women in the country, then what does it say about media's ability to take any woman in America seriously?
I have close friends that will go to the bathroom and put on like 10 pounds of makeup, you know, and you're at school to learn.
I remember 5th grade, I was worrying about my weight, and now I'm in 9th grade, I'm still worrying about my weight.
As a culture, women are brought up to be fundamentally insecure.
Media creates consciousness, and if what gets put out there that creates our consciousness is determined by men, we're not going to make any progress.
Little boys and little girls, when they're 7 years old, an equal number want to be president of the United States when they grow up. But then you ask the same question when they're 15, and you see this massive gap emerging.
We're shortchanging voices that are urgently needed in public forums from ever getting to the table.
As the most powerful country in the world, if you're not standing for the right values and for the right principles, that's a loss for the world.
You get a woman in the Oval Office, most powerful person in the world, what's the downside?
You mean besides the PMS and the mood swings?
The media treats women like shit, and it's horrible, and it's like, I don't know how we survive it. I don't know how we rise above it.
You can't be what you can't see.
It's extremely important for women to be writing their own stories and giving them to people to really emotionally become impacted by.
The media can be an instrument of change. It can awaken people and change minds. It depends on who's piloting the plane.
Keeps beating like a hammer.
Good morning. So, as you can see, Jen created Jen and many others created.
It takes a village.
It does take a village. Created a film that has sparked a movement, indeed. And what I thought would be so obvious to start with today, as I was listening to the beginning conversations, is how has it been for you as a female storyteller, unearthing a lot of the inequity and abuse and kind of horrific stance of women in the media. And you uncovered it and talked about it, and I'm wondering what it's like for you as a female storyteller in reaction to this film. If you've had any pushback or you've had victory, I think it would be interesting just to talk about your perspective as a woman storyteller.
Sure. So let me start from before we even made the documentary. When I went out and tried to find a woman to direct the project, because I'd never directed. I always liked being directed. I didn't think I was capable of that. You see so many male directors in Hollywood and so few female directors. So again, if you can see it, you can be it. And I met with some directors in the entertainment industry who had directed documentaries, female directors, and they loved the idea, the concept of this film. But they all basically turned me down when I asked them to direct it, or even co-direct it. I was like, I just need a little of your time, because they were afraid that they wouldn't have a job afterwards. So there was so much fear. And that's, I think that's pretty pervasive in our society. I think so many of us are afraid, and it's understandable. But hopefully, as a result of the film and the movement and everything we're doing, we're all going to be less afraid, because we all have each other. And we have some incredible men of consciousness who have our backs. So that's one thing. When I was raising funding for the film, I was told that we had bigger problems overseas, that Hillary Clinton had run for the presidency, so we'd achieved parity. You all know that, right? When one woman's at the top, we think that we've achieved parity. That's not the truth. I was also, you know, and even, I mean, my family questioned what I was doing, and that's always hard, right? And even my husband was like, honey. And now he's my biggest advocate, and he's so supportive. But only because he was like, he saw me working my butt off and working till 2, 3 in the morning, and he just was nervous for me and anxious for me. But that's getting off track. Really, I would say, having made this film, I mean, there are definitely, all the things we women have, all the obstacles of, I've gone to screenings at Sundance where I've worn a dress or I've worn high heel boots or had my hair down, and people challenged me for looking feminine or having blonde hair, long hair. And they wanted me to be wearing a suit to take me seriously. I had some bankers on the East Coast be like, you're the director, and why aren't you wearing a suit? It's just hard to take you seriously. And that really frustrated me. And I've had young girls occasionally, when I was pregnant, I remember a screening here in San Francisco, be like, why aren't you part of the problem? Because, I was wearing heels, and despite my belly, she thought that I looked sexy. And that was frustrating, because that's not, again, people need to listen to what women say and stop judging us on how we look. I do think we've gone as a society, I try as a mother, as a working mother, I try and kind of walk that line of just being a whole person who's not solely focused on certain elements. And I get that the stereotype of our value being in our youth, our beauty, and our sexuality, I definitely am challenging that and fighting that as much as possible. I feel very alone at times when I'm in certain environments, and whether people have indulged in plastic surgery or whether the only thing they can talk about is fashion and clothes, I feel a little bit alone. So in terms of storytelling, I definitely feel like, to answer something that I think you started to ask that I want to just kind of jump in on, is we're so complex. But unfortunately, it's so easy to stereotype us in advertising and media, and we're recognizing that there are steps that can be taken to improve the representations and portrayals of women in front of the camera, and much of that has to do with getting more women behind the scenes.
And let me jump in on that, because I know this when we have conversations like this, especially in a room like this with such esteemed women and bright and intelligent, I almost feel like this feels like we should know the answer. It's got a big duh behind it, but let's just name it. So why is it so important for us to have women at the helm of storytelling, especially in advertising and media? Why is that? Could we name in particular why that is?
Sure. It's because of our life experience. It's because of our perspective. It's because men have been in charge and in control for a long time. Not all men being of consciousness, some of them yes. And look at where we are. We're a mess. We're selling sex and violence to our kids 24/7 in U.S. media. I was just in Abu Dhabi, and I don't care that the women were clothed in their abayas and the men wore their white robes. They were not traumatized, but very upset. I mean, they flew me out there to speak to them. The royal family did, because they're so concerned, because they have so much money, so every family member has their own computer, and their kids are consuming all of the junk tabloid trash that we're exporting to them. And so then this is becoming normalized in their culture, that this is a woman's value, this is a woman's place in the world, this is a man's, and it conflicts with their spirituality, and it conflicts with their value system. And I don't think in America, I mean, I'm just gonna throw this big thing out here. I question our value system. I think we're lost right now. We're so headed down the sell, sell, sell road, and I'm going, where's the meaning in that? Where's the triple bottom line model? Where's the social responsibility, the environmental responsibility, and what we're doing? And I think women really, really get that, and I think it's sort of in our genetic makeup just from raising kids, whether we give birth or not. I just think it's sort of in us. I think men get it, but I think unfortunately we haven't raised our boys to really recognize that there is meaning and value in that, and mostly in this country because we so bifurcate gender and push our boys into these extremes of masculinity that aren't always the healthiest masculinity. Masculinity is great, but when we push them down this extreme and this narrow definition of what it is to be a man, I think we ultimately give them very few options.
Well, both of our genders live in very extreme paradigms right now. So this morning we talked a lot, I heard talked a lot about mentorship
Yes.
and women holding doors open for other women and creating relationship and networking. And I'm wondering who has been most instrumental for you in not only birthing the film, but helping to further the movement. Is there a particular story that you can share of a female mentor in your life, either expected or unexpected, that really helped you move through the next level in your career?
I would say there were a few women. Regina Kulik-Scully believed in me. She's somewhat, her husband is my godfather, and she's now the godmother of my daughter. She believed in me when nobody did. She gave me that first seed funding. And that's really kind of all we need. And then, you know, just let us blossom. And we took off from there. But it enabled us to kind of, you know, really delve in there and get some footage and let the world know what we were doing. And then I went off and did these little power hours where I raised the rest of the funding. Geraldine Dreyfus came in. She's an incredible, they're both executive producers on the film. Geraldine's an incredibly, she has just the most beautiful heart and no ego. And she's just, how are we going to help you finish this film? What can I do? And she really helped guide me through the whole Sundance process and through getting the film, through kind of the distribution side of thing, and has just been a role model mentor. And I continue to call her when I fall back into, I think, very female, into my own areas of weakness where I feel small, or I feel like afraid, or even the financial stuff is overwhelming to me. So they've been there, and I've really relied on them more and more. And then I would just say it took a village. Pat Mitchell, you know, gave me her time and really was sort of like, I don't know. And then, I mean, she allowed me to speak at TED Women and really has supported and encouraged me. So I just think there's all these incredible women out there. I mean, Jess Congdon, our editor, like she and I, both of us had babies at the same time. We were breastfeeding while she was editing. Literally, she'd be editing with a baby on her boob, and I was seated right next to her with a baby on my boob, and we'd be sitting there cutting the film. And we just did it. You know, we had each other's backs. Abby, who is with my kids right now, fed us, you know, made sure we had healthy food. I mean, I really, really, really believe that it not only takes a village, but that there's beautiful things happen when women come together and support each other. Beautiful things happen. And I think we're on this wonderful path in, like, look at you here with me today, Jess. I mean, you know, Jess has been just so gracious and giving, and we're creating these really cool things. And so I just want to just put, you know, wonderful things happen when women come together and when men join that circle with the same sort of passion and dedication to empowering women.
Let's talk about one of those really cool things. Kat referenced it yesterday. We had the opportunity to have a smaller, very intimate think tank with advertising executives, creative directors around this conversation of how do we change the 3% stat, but also how do we encourage, retain, recruit, enable us to be better storytellers for women out there. And you and I do similar work from two different places, which is why this can be so complementary. And I often work with brands and businesses and networks, and some people might even say some of the worst offenders of some of the media out there, but I work from the inside out, helping advocate internal change as well as external change. And it takes both sides, doesn't it? Because when you see a film like this, you're incredibly moved. I've seen a range of reactions every time I've watched it, from intense rage and tears to this sadness to this euphoric like hope that there's going to be something better. And the truth is, we need to put together the puzzle, you know, the puzzle pieces. And there are change that happens from the outside, and there are change that happens from the inside. And we have to change consumer culture as well as the industry culture at the same time, so that we're creating that supply and demand differently. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what you think this industry in particular can do to shift some of the messages that we're seeing in your film, some of those negative messages. Specifically yesterday, somebody spoke of a story of just being in a room where where there was a lot of sexist conversation happening, for instance, and you talked about, and I'd love for you to share the Rosie O'Donnell story, actually.
Okay.
But there was, conversation that happens in and around us that feels sexist or racist or homophobic or inappropriate, and the room goes silent with shame, and nobody really speaks up and says anything. So I'm wondering, from interpersonal meetings like that to professional, like, what can we do tangibly in this industry to make a difference?
That's great. So, I mean, mentoring and sponsorship is critical, and if you all can continue to come together like this and really support each other and advocate for each other, recognize there's room for all of us, recognize that you need to not only help the woman up behind you, but you need to help the woman who went off on maternity leave and she wants to come back and re-engage in whether it's your firm or a different firm. That's so important. I wouldn't be anywhere if I hadn't the support of other women and men of consciousness. So that's so critical. The gendered principles, which San Francisco, we have to be so proud. San Francisco goes, so goes the rest of the country. We have a partnership, the San Francisco Commission on the Status of Women with the Calvert Group, and they have these principles that are best practices for growing and retaining your female workforce. You've got to look into those. You just have to. It's a must. Women at the same level as a man, you need to be making the same amount of money, and you have the right and authority to ask those questions. You also should be promoting yourselves. Men are more comfortable, not all men, but men are more comfortable promoting themselves or asking for that next position. There's also a need for us women to, as Sheryl Sandberg says, not to, opt out before we've had the baby, and even when we have the baby, work with them to figure out is there a room where I can pump and breastfeed, and can we create flex time or something, because you're invaluable. You're really invaluable, and value yourself and know what you bring to the table. So I think that whole bit, all of that's really important. And then I would say, just in terms of culture and shifting culture, we have to have these conversations. I'm so appreciative of all you men in the room, and I'm so appreciative of all the men that were there yesterday. I was so moved by the stories. Men have to be part of the conversation. You can't just take this home to your spouse and your kids, which please do. And if you don't have kids, your niece, your nephew, your close friends, your community.
Somebody walking on the street.
Exactly. But we have to then have this, we have to bring this conversation into meetings and the boardroom, et cetera, et cetera. And men, we need you, although women, you can do it just as well and make sure you have each other's back so you feel safe. But by the way, you have us supporting you. But men, when you speak out and challenge sexism, and when you value women publicly, I mean, God bless you all. You move mountains. You really do. And women, we have to do it ourselves, because sometimes there isn't someone there who's going to do it for us. So the cultural shift, I think, is so important, because at the end of the day, and I'll just share this story about a woman's value in our current culture, there's so many stereotypes, right? That our value lies in our youth, our beauty, and our sexuality. There's the whole ageism issue, which drives me nuts. And let me just share this one story that is just explains the insidiousness and the subtleness of sexism and of stereotyping. When I made the film and we sold it to Oprah Winfrey Network, OWN invited us to be on the Rosie O'Donnell show. And we brought some of the young girls from the documentary to Chicago, and Gloria's Time and a few other people were all part of this program. We also had Meghan McCain to demonstrate the nonpartisan situation. And basically, I was one of the last women to go into hair and makeup. I'd just flown in the night before from a screening at the Paley Center here in Los Angeles. And basically, as I walk into the makeup room, I actually didn't recognize one of the girls that was in the documentary, because she had so much makeup and her hair was all tousled and done, like a Victoria's Secret model. And I was like, whoa, hi, but I was a little embarrassed because I didn't recognize her. And then I thought, okay, interesting that they're doing that to everyone, because it's kind of nice just to look like yourself, but maybe enhanced a little bit. And then I saw Meghan McCain had black makeup all the way down here, and I turned to the makeup lady and I said, can you just, I didn't sleep, so maybe cover up the black circles, but I just want to look like myself. Camera ready, but just like myself. And she kind of looked at me and gave me this look. She wasn't very nice. And so she did that. No fake eyelashes. I just wanted to be like myself. Then I went over into the hair chair, and she said, okay, how are we going to do your hair? And I said, could you put it back in a ponytail? And I was sensitive because I'd been coming off of this experience at Sundance where this man was really critical of me for having long blonde hair. And I was pregnant, by the way. I remember I was in front of a black podium, and I literally stood in front of the podium so that he could see that I was not trying to be sexy. I was just the director, and I'm an artist like all of you, and I was just being professional, and I had my hair down. I think I washed it once that week. And and so I was a little bit sensitive, so I just said, you know, just put my hair back in a ponytail, because sometimes I feel like people take me more seriously when my hair's back in a ponytail. And she said, well, I can't do that. And I said, well, what do you mean? She's like, well, I'm gonna have to get permission from the producers. And I said, they really care about how much? She's like, you have to look sexy. And I was like, excuse me, have you seen this movie? Do you know what this is about? I am not an actor. I mean, I directed this. Like, I was shocked. So it's so like deeply entrenched in our culture and in the mindset of all of us that women have to look sexy. And it drives me nuts because we're not objects for the male gaze solely. Every once in a while it's nice. You want to dress up, go out with your partner, go dancing, have fun. I don't know about you guys, but it drives me nuts that we're supposed to be these like coiffed, perfect, blah, blah, blah people all the time. We're not. We're so much more than that. And so talking about stereotypes, what you all can do is bring real, authentic female depictions into your stories and into your storytelling. Yourselves, your best friend, your neighbor, your daughter. Maybe your daughter doesn't like princesses. Please, God bless her if she doesn't like princesses. But no, I mean, they're fine. It's a phase for some kids. But, you know, I mean, look, as Gina Davis says, a princess is a great job if you can get it. And I love when I said that in Abu Dhabi to the royal family. I was like, whoops. But I think, anyway, there's so much you can do. When I just my last sort of thing, Jess, is that I feel like we have this huge opportunity. I think our culture is in danger. I really do. I mean, those of you that have teenage kids, I feel for you. I'm trying to change it before my kids get into middle school. Please, you know, but I'm really concerned for future generations and for ourselves. I'm concerned for the women that are aging that feel like they have to do plastic surgery to be taken seriously in the work world. I'm concerned for the men that see no inspiring, healthy role models in media because either the guys, you know, can't get a job, they can't hold together a marriage, they're cheating on their spouses, they're you know, I don't know, they're not men that I would really want to spend that much time with. So I think we have an opportunity to shift culture. And I think it starts with all of us in media. And that's what we set out to do with Misrepresentation. That's what we're aiming to do with misrepresentation.org, with the campaign. And that's why we're here, is like we believe that all of us together can celebrate the incredible media, the inspiring media, the media that reflects the full spectrum of what it is to be a woman and a man in our culture, or a girl or a boy, to give future generations and ourselves inspiration and the opportunity for a fully realized life experience and not a limited stereotypical experience.
I think too, and we're gonna go to questions in a second, when we talk about making change, I think there is a personal risk index that we all have to evaluate for ourselves, which is where this issue strikes us. Is this something that we're willing to walk off a job for? Is this something that we're willing to speak up even though we've got, like, our tummy is shaking and our fists are trembling and we know that we're saying something that's so scary to say out loud, but we need to say it. I think that even hearing this story, and the reason I wanted you to share the Rosie O'Donnell experience is really not for a blame and shame game, but to illustrate the fact that even those of us who want to make the biggest change in this industry still carry with us some socialization of these beliefs, and they come out in lots of ways. They come out in people pleasing, they come out in career dreams and aspirations, right? We want to move up and elevate our career, and so we're going to play by a game, a perceived set of rules that are already out there that we feel like we've got to believe in. And so I think just as we begin to wrap up this part of the conversation, and you continue some really wonderful ones today, and really want to give a very humble, gracious thank you to Kat for holding this space and creating this space to have this, because I think every time we experience an audience watching Misrep, every time we have a conversation like this, whether it's on IM or in your bedroom or in your living room or to that random person in your life, it does get a little bit better. I think that there's part of it is this advocacy and awareness, and then there's the action space. And everybody in here is going to have to decide what level of action they're willing to take and to commit to. And I think that's really important that we start. So whether it's speaking up when you're doing casting and somebody asks if that person is too chubby or needs bigger cleavage, or things that aren't going to essentially sell a product, but kind of more about the sexualization and imagery, and how do we say it in a way that can be received, where it can land, where it can be heard, because that's the other thing, right? Sometimes we don't have to kick a door open when the door is actually open to have this conversation. So finding where we can do that, I think, is really important, and that's why I like spending time and hearing you chat about that. So we'd love to hear from you in the last couple of minutes. Questions, comments, ideas. It's a lot to jam pack in 30, but we'll power through. I think, do you want to grab a mic, or how do? Did you get your ponytail? Oh, that's a good question.
I did. Thank you. I did. Thank you so much. Yes, I was adamant.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
My question is, I love what you have to say about how we can change the culture and educate and get women in these positions.
Oh, hold on. We're gonna get you a mic.
Hi, I'm Scott Feldman. I work for Progressive Solutions. We're a local company in the South Bay.
Hi, Scott.
And I love what you have to say, and I totally on board. What I'm not hearing and what I'm wondering is if 97% of the people making these decisions that are sexually based or chasing the almighty dollar, how do we get the men on board? Because the men, even though, I hate to say this because I'm a man, but we're already in those positions. So it seems like a quicker way to change the world. If we're going to make that change, if we could get half the men all of a sudden to think like you're thinking, it would be quicker than a generation from now, women being 10% or 20%.
So I would suggest, thank you so much, by the way, and you're the beginning of it. You coalescing and bringing together your male colleagues and peers and having this conversation. And sometimes, I'm not pushing the film on you, but it impacts them on an emotional level. It's not like they're just reading an academic Atlantic, journal article, or so the movie impacts them on an emotional level. Fathers of daughters in particular really get this. Men who are married to working women get this. Many men get it. So it's really just educating the men, giving them the facts and the stats. But most importantly, and I think what I'm hearing is, you all, hopefully, will mentor and sponsor women up the ladder. And it doesn't have to take 5 years. You literally focus on we talked about this yesterday. We tend to gravitate towards and hire people that are like us, that look like us, that are familiar to us. So if we can all get out of that comfort zone and make a concerted effort to actually mentor or sponsor a woman, whether she's been out of the workforce because she had kids, or she's our equal, or maybe she's even just above us, but you know that she has the potential to be the next CD or to start her own firm or whatever, help her, support her, sponsor her. I think that is the best way right now. And given that so many men are in leadership. So maybe that needs to be sort of a pledge or concerted effort in the industry.
I would also add, modeling it is really important, right? That it's not enough just to say it, but to model it. And if you want to host a 97% conference, we could do that. I feel like in a way that there's,
I love that idea.
Become an agent of change in the way that you can, but I think it's about men and women, but I hear your point about men in this majority position, and what do we do? And I think we have to do it together. I don't know that you can do it for us. We need to do it together, but I think it's about modeling it in your work, about making it in the DNA, baking it into the DNA of your business. Yeah. That you're not going to produce material that is destructive, damaging, and divisive about women. And pledging to do that and committing to do that and risking. We all are going to need to risk, but that's a way to do it. And I think having the conversation and going back and saying, hey, listen, I was a part of this event today, and here's what I thought about, and here's where it can apply here. And I think it's an evolution and a revolution at the same time.
And we can connect you with other men, although you might all know each other already, but who want to support, who together, you guys will be that much stronger in having a voice for women. Thank you.
No.
Just keep
So
loudly.
Okay, I'll speak loudly. Jennifer and Jess, thanks for this conversation. It's really exciting. I wanted to sort of address something that we've talked about a little bit with the women mentoring women, as well as Scott's question about how do you affect people who have, how do you, still, no.
No.
Oh, there we go.
No. How do you affect people who have the power? And I think there's a conversation that needs to be had, and this is both for men and women, because we all know that women can sometimes be our own worst enemies, right? That there's a feast or famine mentality with business, and that there has to be more conversation about, I mean, I don't want to be Pollyanna about this. I know we're coming out of a recession, but the reality is there's a lot of business to go around, and just because she has it, or he has it, or you have it, doesn't mean that there's not enough room for somebody else to have it too.
Right.
And so how do we continue that conversation both in our mentoring and just in our daily work styles?
I mean, I just think we need to keep, I mean, you kind of answered it yourself in the sense that there's room for all of us, and we just have to keep reminding ourselves of that. And I think by modeling and celebrating others' successes, you create a space and an energy that's celebratory and recognizes that there's room for all of us.
And I think, you know, it goes back to that personal risk index for me, which is you have to decide how important it is to believe in a different theory of abundance in work. And that takes practice. You have to change your beliefs by changing the way you practice that. So I think that's an individual task that then begins to sort of like ripple out, and we see it more and more. But we certainly live in a culture where we seem to feel like we need to compete for everything, whether it's love, you know, especially in television land, media land, we're competing for love and money and a better body and, you know, the love of some, you know, douchey guy on a bus, and like we'll do whatever it takes, right, to compete. And I think some of it does trickle down again in this unconscious way where we then look at each other as enemies and not allies. And you know, one of the things, like I do a lot of work with young girls and teens, and one of the things that we talk about right away is sort of the checklist that you put through your mind when another woman walks in the room or another girl walks in the room. And we spend so much time saying like, well, be nice to her, be nice to her, be nice to her. But I really want to say, be nice to yourself. Because that checklist is really our checklist that we wake up with in the morning. Teeth, hair, body, butt, legs, clothes, whatever it is, and we go through it. And so this change I really do think is personal and starts from within, and then we can see that change professionally.
And can I just add one last thing? I think facts are really important for men. One of the things I've been getting from men who've seen the film, especially men in a quantitative field, that the facts really kind of, even young men actually, young boys are like, oh my gosh, my mom works, my sister's really smart. I didn't realize the situation was as bad for women as it is, right? So facts are really important. So a couple facts that are interesting to share. One is, and maybe some of you may know this, but there was a study conducted at the University of Baltimore which proved, related to advertising, that the young male market, 18 to 24, 34, they're actually not interested in sex and objectifying women in terms of ads that attract their attention. They're much more interested in humor. They want to laugh. And so I'm like, why did we keep making this stuff like Victoria's Secret, blah, 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 and Go-Go Daddy, you know, that's almost repulsive? I mean, we're like, that's so objectifying and so like in your face, women are objects for the male gaze. So that's interesting. That's something you could share with your male colleagues. That's also shouldn't that help your business? Shouldn't your business or your client's business be more successful if you actually adopted that practice? So that's one thing. The other thing is just to, in a very gentle, loving way, remind ourselves of our own, we women and men have it both, but our own internal belief systems, our own internal sexism. There's a study that came out, some of you may have read it in the New York Times, two studies really quickly. Academics and scientists basically were given two different job descriptions. one with the name of Jennifer and one with the name of John, I think. And essentially, they were asked to decide whether or not what they were going to pay both of these people and if they were going to hire them or promote them. And we think of scientists as, you know, objective and analytical, and in a sense that they wouldn't put one gender over the other. Well, they did. In fact, what they did was they promoted and hired the Johns over the Jennifers, and they paid the Johns more than they paid the Jennifers in a starting salary. So that was really interesting. And by the way, women scientists did the same thing. It wasn't just men. So we all have to really think about our own internal sexism and how we put women here and men in that category, and how we don't see women as leaders. And one other study that's just, I think, worth sharing, and this is nothing, my mother stayed at home, some of my best friends stayed home. I think it's incredible, it's a very hard job. I just want to share that men in positions of power and influence, from this study, it was a Harvard visiting professor who conducted this study in the UK and the US, men from traditional marriages where their wives stayed at home were less likely to promote their female colleagues into leadership and less likely to see these women as equals than men in modern relationships where the women also worked. And again, that's not to blame. So please I want to make that clear. We have to continue to educate those who have grown up in worlds and where women are objects, women are second-class citizens, women have less value. Being a woman, anything that's feminine has less value than anything that's masculine. So just not to end on a downer, but information is power. And if delivered with the right tone and with love and empathy, because we're all guilty of it, I mean, I'm guilty, we have to, if delivered in the right way, we really can transform our culture.
We don't have to end on a downer because we get one more question, Kat says.
Oh, thanks, Kat.
So all the way in the back.
Just wanted to say that since you're talking about staying
Where
at home.
are you?
I'm back here, sorry. Sue Lucas with Sapient Nitro. The other side of it, I think, is equally important, and as women, we need to influence it, and that is, my husband gave up his architecture business to stay at home with our children. And what's been really interesting for him is his ability to be accepted by the other stay-at-home moms. And so my son gets fewer play dates because of that. So I think Sheryl Sandberg says it well when she says, you know, make your partner a real partner. So, you know, that idea is great. But just making sure that as women we are also accepting and helping others accept the idea of men taking an equal role at home as well as at the workplace. So just thought important to add.
Yes, great. I 100% agree. And our media could do a better job of not making these guys, you know, pathetic. And, you know, I mean, really, I mean, there's humor and it's, you know, but really we should be celebrating those men because caregiving is an incredible pursuit, and it's very, very important. And we don't respect caregivers. We don't give caregivers enough respect in our society, and we need them.
We were. Do you want to? And
Is
does that
there a
count as our
question, a last
question?
question?
It did. Okay.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Can I just say, sorry, you all can join us at misrepresentation.org to continue the conversation, because it's really interesting when we pull out the news and the articles and the research that we think will inspire and stimulate and move us forward. So go to misrepresentation.org, join us on Facebook, and continue the conversation.
Thank you.